Hey guys, Titan Parents, welcome back to the channel. So last week's video we talked about light and noise discipline. This week's video is going to be very similar, but it's smell discipline. How do we keep people from knowing that we are cooking during SHTF? So this comment came up a lot in the groups that I'm in, and to me it's kind of a silly question. But there are people who are actually worried that other people are going to be able to smell them cooking a meal after SHTF. How do we prevent that? Right? So today's video we're going to go through a couple different things that we can do to prevent it, but then we're going to explain why I think it's a silly ass question. The problem: SHTF is hit and you are hungry. You want to cook whatever it is you are eating. How do we do so in a way that doesn't give off smell? Number one, you could not cook it, right? Maybe you could have MREs. Maybe you could have things that don't require cooking, canned food, canned raviolis, MREs, right? Things that don't require cooking to eat the meal. That is one good way of not giving off your location by a food smell. You could do a burner inside, right? A lot of people are worried about using propane inside their house. As long as you're smart about it, you have a fire extinguisher and you're not using the 20-pound tanks, most small propane isobutane systems have a shutoff valve. Now, I'm not saying use these inside your home, but end of the world happens, rules kind of go out the window, right? I could set my little isobutane stove right here and I could cook a meal. Maybe I can boil some water for a Mountain House meal. Maybe I could have one of those dual Coleman stoves with one little 1-pound tank in it and 2 burners, and I can do eggs and bacon, right? So I can maybe cook indoors. If you're indoors, that smell is hopefully not going to go outside. A lot of people are discussing this as a cooking outdoors, right? And so how can we cook outdoors instead of eating cold meals and using propane indoors? A lot of people talk about the Dakota fire pit. And the Dakota fire pit is a underground fire system. So you dig a hole, and then you dig another hole right here, and you have the fire right here, a feed chute / air chute right here, and you put your frying pan or something on top of this hole. So as the air comes in, it's burning whatever you've got down here, and it's shooting the flames up. But again, it's in the ground, so the flames are surface level. You put your frying pan on top, it basically covers up the flames. So that is one way, right? That is a interesting way of doing things. Rocket stove works the same way, but it's above ground. If you are worried about people seeing the fire, then yes, Dakota fire pit / rocket stove, you could have those fires going and no one would be able to see it, especially if you were behind like a building or something, right? If you're out in an open field and you got a real fire that's 6 foot high versus a Dakota fire pit, they're never going to see the Dakota fire pit, right? Because it is surface level. So the pros of this is that both the Dakota fire pit and the rocket stove give off very little light because they are chute burners. So with the Dakota fire pit, you got the chute, it comes out the top, you put something over the top, it covers it. With a rocket stove, it's basically the same thing. You have a V-shaped, kind of an L-shaped, like that. So you've got the chute for the flames, you got the feed port right here, you cover up the chute for the flames. It cooks whatever. So again, very low visibility. The cons with this is it's very difficult to build when it's wet. If everything's wet, you dig a hole, then you're going to have a wet hole. And sometimes you don't want that. And especially when trying to build a fire, you don't want a wet hole to try to build a fire. The next thing is you have to dig every time you go, or every place you go. Now, if it's your own property, and you have this one certain location you want to cook in, maybe you can shield it from like 3 or 4 sides so it doesn't get, rain into it. You dig that hole, you cover the hole up when you're done. Great. But again, if you're out trying a bug out situation, well, now you have to dig a hole. Now, it probably ain't going to take you long, but it's still time, energy, and effort. Okay? Another way that people are talking about cooking after SHTF is something like a charcoal stove. So luckily with a charcoal stove, you can burn biomass material in it, right? Sticks, leaves, whatever. And you set the fire, you shut the thing. Especially with charcoal, it kind of heats up and then that fire stays in there. Once the fire goes out, the embers, the charcoal briquettes are still hot and therefore still providing the heat. You can throw things on top of it, cook them, and then eventually they'll burn themselves out. The propane stoves work the same way, like the actual propane, like grills. Obviously, you gotta have gas, you turn them on, you put the food in there, you shut them. Great, because people aren't going to be able to see that. The problem with this is the smell. So obviously charcoal, especially with lighter fluid, has a distinct smell. Just like the wood coming from the biomass burning a normal fire, people are going to be able to smell that fire. Now, they might not be able to see the fire, but they're going to be able to smell it. You burn charcoal, it's going to give off a distinct smell. So that is one thing that a lot of people are worried about is, well, how do I prevent people from smelling my food? I think we're worrying about the wrong thing. My neighbor burns a lot, right? He's got a wood burning stove at his building. He burns some trash. Cool, whatever, right? Anytime I pull in the driveway, anytime I pull down my road, I can tell you who's got their fires lit during the wintertime. Because you can see the smoke, you can smell the smoke, you know that the smoke is there. People are going to be able to see the fire or smell the fire long before the food. I know he has fire, chances are he's either using it to heat or he's cooking with it. So I'm going to smell, my nose is going to smell and follow that fire. So I don't know why we're worried about cooking the food over the fire when you should be worried about the fire itself. To cook food and to be worried about, oh my gosh, I'm giving off the smell of cooking food, but what about the smell of the charcoal? That smell of charcoal and lighter fluid goes a long way than the smell of the food. And when I smell the charcoal, I'm going to be like, well, follow that smell. So we're worrying about the wrong thing. Yes, you don't want to give off and let everyone know you're cooking. But if it's SHTF and you have a fire, there's a 50-50 shot that you are cooking something. You're either cooking something or you're burning something. We're worried about, oh, what if they smell my bacon, but not what if they smell my charcoal, right? So how do we prevent the smell of smoke, the smell of fire, which then eventually leads to the smell of food? There's only a couple of ways, really. Number one is solar. Solar ovens are the only way that you are going to prevent that smell from getting out. That fire smell, that charcoal smell, or the food smell from getting out. Whether you got the All-American Sun oven, you put a Dutch oven inside of it, or some sort of big pot system, you leave it out in the sun all day, and it's going to cook your meals. Or you got something like the GoSuns, where they're small, they're portable, they don't cook as much food, but they cook smaller amounts of food faster. There's no smoke, there's no fire, there's no charcoal briquettes. Right? Solar is going to be like one of the top options if that's what you're worried about. Of course, pros and cons with them. Pros is there's no smell, there's no fires, there's no charcoal, there's no fuel you have to use. The cons is you have to have sunlight, unless you get like the E-trays, the plug-in trays for the GoSun, and then all you need is like a 12-volt battery or a portable power station solar generator. You could build like a pit fire. You're still going to give off the smell of fire, but if you build that fire fast enough, get it hot fast enough, and then cover it with dirt, it's going to prevent that smell from coming out and seeping out. Right? Wrap whatever food you want to in it, throw it in the dirt, cover the dirt up, the fire up with the dirt. The ashes, the coals, the embers are going to heat that food up. And then of course there's cooking indoors. Now, maybe you have a large propane tank outside like I do. You can cook indoors after SHTF goes on. No one's going to know about it until you run out of propane. But then my thought is, well, what if it's summertime? Right? During summertime, during SHTF, my windows are going to be open. It's going to be hot as balls in here. So all my windows are going to be open. I'm going to have cooking going on. It's going to be going out the windows. Right? So people are going to smell it. Now, maybe during the wintertime, you shut all the windows, you cook. But again, I truly think that we are worrying about the wrong thing. I think that we are worrying about the food, but not about how we're going to get the food. We're worrying about the food, but not about how we're going to grow the food, or how we're going to raise the food, or go hunting for the food, right? Because the question of how can I cook without people smelling the food, what are you going to do when that food runs out? Are you going to try to grow a garden without people seeing it? Are you going to try to grow a garden without people smelling it? Because I know my watermelon patch, you can smell that shit from like a street away. My chickens, right? Back when we had them, they made a bunch of noise. They were a bunch of food, right? They were walking nuggets. I can't keep them quiet. I can't keep them from stinking up the place. So how am I going to prevent them from, stinking up? I think we're worried about the wrong thing. But if you are worried about it, right, MREs are going to be your best bet. The 5-minute chef meals, maybe. They have flameless ration heaters too if you can't afford MREs. Cooking all your food or eating it cold, right? There's something called cold soaking, where you take like noodles and you just soak them in water, cold water, for hours on end, and it rehydrates them without making them warm. A bunch of hikers do it. But if you're talking about actually cooking like meats and stews and things over an open fire, again, your best bet is either a Dakota fire pit, a rocket stove, or solar. And again, all of them come with their own cons. But again, let me know what you think down below. What are your plans for people not smelling your food after SHTF? Are you worried about it? Are you not worried about it? Or you think people are going to smell you long before they smell the food? Or do you think that as soon as you go outside and cook, boom, somebody's going to show up at your door hoping for a plate? Let me know down below. That's all I got. T2 out.